What's up, everyone? So, it's going to be an interesting video right here by you know who on their clip section. It's about PS5 Pro sales slowing down and why. But not only why, but Digital Foundry basically saying that, it's the most underwhelming console and that it's not necessarily necessary and that PSSR had too many issues and that the price point is still up, as we've told people. I told them it should have been 600. And if you were gonna do that, you should have added in a CPU upgrade rather than the, extra terabyte, because you could do that without them needing to do that. You can't put the new CPU in there yourself, you know what I mean? It's not going to work. It's an APU. So, yeah, in this video, they especially break down why PS5 Pro is not really needed and what's the point. And that it didn't launch around any games that they even provided. And yeah, it gets interesting. So, like I'm subscribed, let me know what y'all think. Let's get into this. This is going to be interesting. Ponies, relax, sit down. I gotta train them like you train dogs. Or they're gonna get up and throw rainbows all over at you.
So we've got a couple of questions here. The first one comes from Clock Rocket and the second one from MG Subby, but it all revolves around the same topic. So this week it was revealed, or rather there was, I think, an analyst report suggesting that while PlayStation 5 Pro enjoyed a pretty strong launch, the take-up has been running rather slower, like for like, compared to PS4 Pro. First question then. Greetings, DF team! Exclamation point. If the numbers are looking down for PS5 Pro, do you reckon it's because PSSR hasn't performed as well as predicted? PS4 enhancements were underwhelming, or PS5 Pro enhancements have been a very small mixed bag. All of them, some none. I'm assuming that's a PS5 meant in there. Was the drop in sales of the PS5 Pro compared to the PS4 Pro really anything but obvious? High sales at first because it's an enthusiast system, enthusiasts tend to buy early, but then a drop off as it's a $700, €800 system, €800. Which is 75% more / twice as expensive as the PS5 Pro was. Then there's the factor of 4K TVs becoming popular after the PS4 launch and the 4K being accounted for in that system, while there is no change in display support from PS5 Amateur to PS5 Pro. Is this really a surprise to anyone? John, thoughts on this one?
Oh, man. I mean, the problem with PS5 Pro is multi-fold, I would say. So obviously the price is a big one, as it mentions, because it is significant.
See, they're saying this. You think Digital Foundry is saying that because they're broke? Because you had ignorant, delusional fanboys saying it's because people can't afford it. It's like, dude, that's dumb. Digital Foundry has 1.45 million subs on their main page. They're pretty much millionaires. And 102K right here. And a lot of people say the same thing too. But just in general, like, when I say that, I'm still only talking about a small percentage of the world, you know what I mean? Like 1% or whatever. But the common denominator factor, which you have to look at, is going to look at it and say, no, definitely when you're not giving them a reason to get it, for what? What's the reason? There's no games around there. Anyways, and you might as well start building a PC at that point then. But it just didn't have any reason to be sold to me. Like, I don't see the point of it. GTA, cool, but I guarantee you that's not going to be 60 frames still. And a lot of people say that, and it's like, you're not going to get 60 with GTA. So,
Significantly more expensive than the PS4 Pro was. But the PS4 Pro also had this, like, it came just at the right time as 4K TVs were taking off, right?
yep.
And I think that factor, as I mentioned there, is central to this. That is, like, it's a very clear thing to message to the consumer to say, hey, you got that new 4K TV? PS4 Pro is designed for 4K TVs. And that's it. It's a simple thing to sell. The PS5 Pro, it's a very different beast. And in fact, even we've kind of puzzled, like, how do you sell this to a customer? It really almost targets like the type of person that is keeping track of PC GPU numbers and such, but just maybe wants to be on a console, right? Because that fundamentally the upgrades, they're, to us, they're big enough, but I feel like the average consumer maybe just isn't going to appreciate or care about that stuff. And in some cases, the differences are so small that you really have to like capture the footage, take it into Premiere, and it's hard to appreciate, like, is this actually that much better? Is it even really better at all? And sometimes it's actually worse, thanks to PSSR having some issues, right?
Did you see what he just said? You know, when they did the FSR4 AMD video recently, when you saw the differences, it's clear as daylight. Like, oh, I don't need you to zoom in, do all of this. You don't have to do any of that. The PS5 to PS5 Pro, the differences are very noticeable. And if you want to notice certain things, like you said, you got to zoom in and do all this stuff. You're not going to do that when you're playing the game. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. You're going to play like you've always played it. So, with that being said, it's like, what are you really trying to do here? When you went from the PS4 to PS4 Pro for only $100 extra, there was a much bigger difference compared to, even if you can get consoles on sale right now for $350, which PlayStation 5s can do that, bundled in with a game, you're jumping up twice the price that they're asking. That's why I said it's an anti-consumer move. That's why the sales are dropping. People don't want to buy it. Even in Japan, with the Famitsu sales for Monster Hunter, right? Watch this, y'all. Monster Hunter Wilds had came out, right? You would think that there would be a major jump for sales in Japan, because that's just like Pokemon. Watch this. What you got to say, ponies? Only 7,000 Pros sold, but guess what? 75,000 PlayStation 5 sold in Japan. Digital, 26,000. Japan's not stupid. They're not going to go for that. Tell me why the Pros didn't move. Because they knew that the PS5 base is good enough and that the difference is not going to be that crazy. And they play Switch all the time, you know what I mean, in handheld. It's about getting that experience. And I try to tell people the same thing. Like, it's about people just wanting to get in and play that gaming experience. They're not going to be graphics whores. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that stuff. That's for hardcore enthusiasts. And if they do, you know what I mean? It's just because they just want to buy it because they can afford it and it's no problem. And a lot of people can do that. But when you just look at it, I tell people all the time when you make these type of decisions, sometimes when you look at something, even if you have a lot of money, it's like, is that an intelligent decision to support this? Right? It's not about money. It's about, is that intelligent or is that stupid? I'd say for the most part, it's stupid to support that anti-consumer move. Definitely as a console. Should have been $600. Right? Remember, guys, think about this. If somebody asks you a question, do you think I should get this? You should tell them this would be the intelligent decision, I think, and this should be the not intelligent decision. But I don't think you're not intelligent because you have enough money to support it and you just want to get it and because you just want any type of upgrade. See, this just depends on how you look at it. It's just more like, are you ripping me off or not? You get what I mean? And that's what we're talking about here. And what's the point of it?
Like, I think you can still agree there. Like, how do you sell this to the average consumer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a real problem. I mean, there's going to be a subset of people that want the most powerful thing that'll get it, but there's no clear reason to get this over a base PS5 at this point for a lot of people, because the PS5 itself is still very expensive. I think there's a lot of people that want a PS5, and when they can finally get to the point where they're going to afford it, maybe these Pro improvements just aren't worth that extra bit of money, right?
Oliver?
They're being so sincere about it. Why does somebody that has so much money need to lie about that? You know what I mean? It's not anything to lie about. It's more like everybody saw this. That's why the sales are dropping. This is not because not only Digital Foundry is saying this, I'm saying this, a lot of people. It's because the whole world is not buying it. It's falling off a cliff. Japan says no. Even when the biggest game ever, it's sold 600, that's the biggest game Sony has ever had sell on their console. But of course, it's not their game, as I tell people, because they're third-party vampires. They get carried. Now you're selling PlayStation consoles, but before that, you're not moving anything. You want to go back here? All right. Let's go back to the week before. Monster Hunter's coming up, right? Nintendo's always sweeping, by the way. PlayStation 5, 6,000 units only there. 5,000 there, right? People were like, okay, let's just get it. Let's just get a little bit here, but you're not moving the needle. Nintendo in their 8th year are sweeping past you every week, consistently. Let's go back here again a week before. You see, it's mostly just Nintendo in Japan. 8,000, 5,000 again. they're preparing for Monster Hunter. You get what I mean? And then that week it slams down. And let's just go back all the way to like January, right? This is a month where you see it again. It's usually Nintendo sweeping, right? PlayStation 5 Pro 4,600, PlayStation 5 6,000. It's not doing much. Most of their sales are coming out of Europe and then over in USA. As I tell people, Japan's not going for that. Uh, they see the same thing I've been calling out. But yet, nobody wants to accept that reality because they're being deceived by the Western society.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo a lot of what John said. I think just the bare metal fact that the PS5 Pro is so much more expensive than the base console is what makes the situation a little bit unusual, because it's $700 versus $450 in the US for the discless slim PS5, and the PS4 Pro was $400 versus $300 for that base console there last generation. That's a much higher price point relative to the base console here, and a much higher price point in absolute terms as well. At the same time, I think the PS5 Pro software is not as compelling as early PS4 Pro software at the moment, because checkerboard rendering did have its flaws. But a game that was going from 1080p to 1800p CBR or 4K CBR looked a lot better, I think. And even games that were going from 1080p to, say, 1440p, like an Uncharted or something like that, were operating on a margin of resolution where additional pixels really did matter, right? And you were getting a significantly better image in that case, and significantly more stable image. On Pro, it's more mixed. Like, you have some titles like F124 or GT7 where you get enhanced ray tracing, and that looks really good. You have titles like FF7 Rebirth that have much better image quality, but PSSR in general is not really to the level that DLSS is. And the ray tracing boosts are solid but not transformative, typically speaking. I think, though, to me, my kind of what I would clarify here is I think the potential is definitely there if PSSR is given the time and iteration that it needs. Or you get titles like F124 that just have a ton of RT on the PS5 Pro that isn't really present in the PS5.
And this is an Unreal Engine 4 game. It's already done. It's fully optimized. You know what I mean? So it was easy for them to show that off for those select titles. That's the only reason it looked that way. But if you challenge a true next-gen game, it doesn't do that. And I love Rebirth, don't get me wrong, but it's on Unreal Engine 4 for a reason. And I think that was a smart move to go because I didn't want to have any performance issues. So they did the right thing. So you could fully optimize that and you won't have those issues. But if you look at how many problems I have with other games, yeah, it got in a double-digit figure.
So I think the potential is there, but at the moment, if I'm advising someone whether to buy the PS5 or the PS5 Pro, I'm really going to say, are you really interested in waiting a good year or two for those implementations to hopefully get up to snuff? Or are you fine with the PS5 in the here and now? I kind of lean towards the PS5 for most of those users, I suspect.
That's a smart thing to say.
It's interesting because I think what happened was, in terms of coverage for us, certainly at launch, there was a lot of titles that we could look at. And there were a lot of games, just by the law of averages, because there were so many of those enhancements, that actually showed tangible and impressive improvements, right?
Yeah.
But the problem now is that all of that sort of back catalogue of enhancements have kind of come and gone. And what we're seeing now are just kind of like bolt-ons to a release schedule that's already kind of slowing down a bit. So, we're only seeing fewer examples of PS5 Pro upgrades. And then the quality of those enhancements has been quite variable. And it's kind of interesting, I think, Oliver, with your Monster Hunter coverage, where PS5 Pro, just down to the nature of the game, I think the comment that kind of summed it up to me is that it's basically what the PS5 version, base version, should have been like.
Yeah.
And users shouldn't be paying like, $699 to get that base experience, but you can now. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement for the Pro, but it is what it is. It's like, okay, even when there is an enhancement, it's not sort of paying off in quite the way that you would have expected. PSSR, I think, it's pretty clear at this point that it is a work in progress, but it is getting better, and it is going to take them time for it to become, everything that it should be, specifically at lower resolutions. I think the thing that kind of interested me early on that I thought was a bit odd is the fact that we don't, you see PSSR or enhanced resolutions, but it's very rare that you see meaningful resolution boosts plus PSSR.
Right.
And I was also thinking back to, The Last of Us Part 2, and I guess Part 1 as well, where, the performance mode still actually has the same base resolution as the base console version. And obviously, PSSR works nicely from that base resolution.
And that's an old game. That's where they had to show it off. Like I said, if you ask for a new game, not a PlayStation 3 game that's remastered, you're not going to see that. So they were deceiving people by showing off old games to make it seem like it was giving you that benefit. But then when they started playing all these new games were coming out, you just saw too many shivering issues and people were feeling disappointed. It's like, why is this running better on PlayStation 5 base? That shouldn't be happening.
Resolution, and you do get a good upgrade overall. But I'm curious why they didn't actually increase the resolution there.
Yeah.
What do you think, Oliver?
It seems like if you are increasing the resolution of some of the post-processing and you're adding in that 2.1, 2.0, 2.2, whatever millisecond 4K upscale there with PSSR, it seems like that basically eats up almost the entire margin of additional GPU time. When we did testing in The Last of Us Part 1 and Last of Us Part 2 with the PS4 running in its, or rather with the PS5 running in its performance configuration and the PS5 Pro running in its Pro configuration, we saw that in general, actually the frame rates are very, very similar there. So they're eating up almost all that additional GPU time, if not all the.
You see what he's saying, which I find interesting, and I was telling people this too. It's not like when you're getting DLSS and FSR4 now, which is out, where they have NPU aspects, tensor cores and matrix cores, and a fully integrated AI system. Instead of just relying off of the GPU, you still get those frame boosts big time. Whereas on the PlayStation, you're never going to get that because it's going to use up the resources of the GPU, so it's not going to give you that boost in frames. Never going to happen. It's not possible.
That additional GPU time with that enhanced post-processing and with that PSSR upscale. Now, in cases like Monster Hunter Wilds, where the performance mode I don't think has a 4K upscale there with PSSR, instead it's probably operating at like 1080p or perhaps somewhat higher, but not for a full 4K. There you actually do see a significantly higher internal resolution where the game is like bottoming out at 1080p instead of 720p on the base console.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what it comes down to, is that expense of the additional processing time needed for PSSR going to a high resolution primarily.
Yeah, and we've actually seen reductions in native resolution by using PSSR as well, which I find quite fascinating as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, PSSR in general, I do think it's work in progress. It will get better, and it kind of has to because, that's basically the direction of travel for the whole industry at the moment, and likely a key component of whatever PlayStation 6 is going to become. In terms of the drop-off in sales, I think it's exactly as MG Subby says, which is to say that it costs a lot of money, and the enhancements are only going to be enjoyed by, people who want best of the best. I think the other thing to factor in is that, when the PlayStation 4 Pro came along, it wasn't actually that much of a premium in terms of MSRP to actually go for the better model. $100 more. I guess maybe in real world terms, the gap would have been wider because they would have been more aggressively bundling the PlayStation 4, and probably would have been more sale deals, that kind of thing. But even so, the Pro was still attractively priced to the mainstream user. And I think, obviously it's becoming clear that $700 or 800 euros, wow, that's proving to be a bit more of an issue, right? I think that's just basic.
So there you have it. The truth again. You know what I mean? And this is what I was covering before I got into the PS5 versus Xbox drama. It came in to be an equalizer for the Xbox community. I was doing a lot of PS5 versus PS5 Pro. What's the difference? Why this is overpriced? And also comparing it to PC specs, explaining that all to people as well too. And then people just didn't like what I was doing after that because they just couldn't handle it. And it's like, it has to be said, you know what I mean? So we do all types of stuff here. Like, comment, subscribe, let me know what y'all think. And if you own a PS5 Pro, hey, I'm not against you. That's your free will of choice. That's your money, you know what I mean? But we're talking about, let's look at this from a grand perspective and look at the whole entire audience of the gaming industry that will look at that right? Because you have to cover the whole spectrum, not just a very small percentage of people, right? Then you'll have people that'll try to astroturf for that, and it's like, I don't see the point of doing it because the majority are telling you the truth, how they feel, by not supporting it. So that's my take. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a great day. Sonys, sit down.